The Galactic Council Hall shimmered like a prism caught between dimensions. Suspended in orbit above the gas giant Yalith, its crystalline spires twisted in impossible geometries, broadcasting an ancient, arrogant opulence. For thousands of cycles, it had stood as the heart of interstellar diplomacy, untouchable, untamed, and unquestioned. That morning, however, it hummed with something less serene: curiosity, veiled unease, and just a hint of disdain. After all, humans were arriving. They entered without fanfare, no glowing banners, no ceremonial trumpets. Just a single vessel, matte black, shaped like a coffin with wings, sliding into docking ring Theta. From its belly descended a short ramp, and onto the polished welcome platform stepped a man who looked more suited for a Texas barbecue than intergalactic politics. Ambassador Rhys Callahan, representing Earth, he said, doffing a wide-brimmed hat to a stiff alien protocol officer who blinked with all 8 eyes, trying to interpret the gesture. Rhys smiled with a kind of slow warmth that melted suspicion and somehow sharpened it too. Tall, lean, and pressed into a crisp blue suit that barely concealed the reinforced mesh beneath, he moved like a man with no need to prove himself, and yet every motion whispered a dare. Behind him trailed Lieutenant Nadia Solis. She said nothing, her gaze sweeping the hall with quiet intensity. Her boots clicked in sharp contrast to the ambassador's easy gait. No jewelry, no weapons visible, just a lanyard that said Deputy Liaison in half the council's written languages. She carried a black case with biometric locks and what looked suspiciously like duct tape sealing one corner. At the council entrance, a gelatinous being known as Councillor Fulvrot flopped into place, undulating with the excitement of someone who loved rules far more than surprises. Earth delegation, you are to observe only. No interjections, no presentations, no. Of course, Rhys said, his southern drawl slicing through the gelatinous mutter. We wouldn't dream of disrupting such an important gathering. We're just here to learn. We brought snacks. He reached into his bag and pulled out a vacuum-sealed pouch. Beef jerky. Teriyaki. Don't worry, it ain't made from sentience. Fulvrot declined with a polite gurgle and floated backward to avoid the scent. Inside the hall, the council session began with its usual opera of grandeur. Delegates from 200 sentient species floated, slithered, hovered, and clicked into place. Chancellor Tracker presided, his massive form coiled around a crystalline throne, his tentacles draped with ceremonial gold leaf and diplomatic encryption sigils. His voice echoed like bass notes in a cathedral. Let us now observe the newcomers, he said, the term dripping with paternal condescension. Earth. A species newly arrived from Sector 9 Aleph. Still nuclear, still divided, still charming in their volatility. A low ripple of polite laughter murmured through the chamber. Rhys leaned slightly toward Solis and whispered, I feel right at home. This reminds me of a board meeting in Houston. Minus the margaritas and sexual harassment lawsuits, Solis replied dryly. Zelith, an avian scholar with feathers like woven silver, perched 3 tiers above, peered curiously at the humans. She'd read the dossier. What little there was. Earth's digital footprint had been a minefield of contradictions. Wars and weddings, science and superstition, self-destruction alongside poetry. One moment they spoke of love, the next they invented weapons that could erase continents. Now here stood their emissary, smiling, offering meat, quoting peace. Below, the council's official assessment began. A holographic display flickered to life, cycling through human data. Rhys tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. The first slide showed Earth's location. The second, its climate instability. The third, unintentionally, or so it seemed, showed a montage of historical war footage. Trench battles, mushroom clouds, orbital bombardments, and something involving a shopping cart on fire during a riot. Oops, Rhys said, voice mild as warm honey. Wrong file. That one's from our historical tourism brochure. Murmurs rippled louder this time. Zelith caught the twitch in the corner of Tracker's jaw. Gorven, a military commander whose armor glowed faintly with reactor pulses, snorted audibly. Barbarians. Rhys gave him a sideways glance. We prefer adventurously adaptable. But sure. The Chancellor waved a tentacle, and the screen shifted to charts showing Earth's technological inconsistencies. Spaceflight and tribalism. Quantum computing and horoscopes. One chart helpfully labeled, probability of human species self-destructing within 5 galactic cycles. Reese adjusted his tie, stood, and approached the central podium. Counselors stirred, some amused, others annoyed at the breach of protocol. Fulvrot gurgled in protest, but Tracker allowed it with a patronizing nod. Reese leaned into the microphone. "Well now," he began, "first off, I'd like to thank y'all for the warm welcome. It ain't every day you get to stand in the middle of 1,000 species and feel like the weird one." The pause was deliberate. A few aliens chuckled, but most watched warily. Earth may not have the most advanced tech. We may not have united under one flag or solved every problem. But we've done something harder. We survived each other. Solis tapped the case beside her with one nail. Quiet. Intentional. You see, our history's not something we hide from. We put it in museums. We study it. We argue over it at dinner tables and in parliaments. Because every mess we made, we cleaned up with our own hands. Sometimes the same hands that pulled the trigger. Zelith blinked. There was something off here. Not threatening exactly. Not yet. Reese continued, "When we first saw the stars, we didn't see conquerors. We saw possibility. And when we heard about y'all, well, we figured it was time to listen more than talk. A beat. Which is why I brought our tanks." Gasps. Audible now. He held up a palm, smiling as if he'd just complimented someone's garden. "Figured y'all might get nervous. But hey, we're just cautious folk. You never know when someone might take a shine to a fresh species, decide they need civilization." Gorven surged up. "Is that a threat, human?" Reese didn't flinch. "No, sir. That's a memory. We learn from history. Thought maybe y'all did too." Tracker's voice boomed. "Weapons are not permitted within council grounds." "Absolutely, your tentacleness," Reese said. "We followed the rules. The tanks are parked. Quiet as lambs. But if someone tries to protect us a little too enthusiastically, well, I do hope your insurance covers kinetic percussion." Solis leaned close and whispered something. Reese nodded once and stepped back. Zelitha's feathers fluffed slightly, an involuntary sign of rising alertness. The Chancellor eyed the humans for a long, silent moment. "You came to intimidate us." Reese shook his head. "We came to be honest. And polite. And maybe give y'all the courtesy of not underestimating us." There it was, that knife edge beneath the sugar. The council dismissed for recess. Delegates filtered out, most chattering, some glaring. Zelith remained still, watching the human duo. Solis gave her a nod, almost friendly. Almost. Behind them, the black case remained untouched, the biometric locks winking like patient eyes. Outside the chamber, Reese and Solis walked alone down a glimmering corridor that curved like the inside of a nautilus shell. No one followed them. "Think they bought it?" Solis asked. "Nope. Think they're scared." Reese stopped walking. He looked out through a window at the planet below, a swirl of violent storms trapped in a golden atmosphere. "Not yet." He smiled again, softer this time. "But they will be." Zelith watched the humans through the monitor, and for the first time in decades, she felt something she hadn't since her first field mission to a collapsing star colony. Curiosity laced with fear. It was the smile. The way it carried both welcome and warning. She leaned back and muttered to herself. "They came bearing jerky and jokes. But something tells me Earth never just arrives anywhere. They invade with charm." A low alert blinked in the Council's security console. Unsanctioned object. Docking Bay Theta. Mass displacement inconsistency detected. She stared at the readout. Then at the feed of Reese and Solis walking away, shoulder to shoulder. "They're not here to learn," she whispered. "They're baiting us." Outside the hall, Ambassador Reese Callahan adjusted his hat, glanced up at the stars, and tipped his head to Solis. "Let's give the galaxy a lesson they won't forget." And with that, they disappeared into the light, leaving only mystery and a faint whiff of teriyaki. The Council's data review chamber was carved from a single block of transdimensional quartz, transparent to perception, impervious to deception. It was designed so that no lie could be uttered within its walls without resonance cracking the structure. The chamber had never so much as flickered, until humanity arrived. Zelith stood before the central console, her feathers faintly ruffled as lines of human history flickered across the projection grid. Dates, names, conflicts, strange media formats. There were videos labeled World War II, Iraq Invasion, Detroit 2035. Footage of humans dancing in neon-lit streets dissolved into firefights, revolutions, protests. Then laughter. Then famine. Then a viral clip of a man launching a lawn chair into the sky with balloons and a shotgun. She glanced at the council technician beside her, a plant being from Hydrus named VRR-TAC, whose fronds drooped with confusion. "Why is there no pattern?" Zelith asked. VRR-TAC hesitated, photosynthesizing the question. "They exhibit stochastic development. Linear analysis is ineffective. They evolve like chaos in formalware," Zelith finished, watching a sequence titled Best Comebacks from UN Security Council Meetings. A human representative, sweating but smiling, outdebated an 8-lobed monarch from Oxy Prime with something called a filibuster and 4 sarcasm-laced metaphors involving baseball and baked goods. The chamber buzzed. Something in the data had triggered a flag. "Stop there," Zelith said. A satellite image bloomed on the screen. Docking Bay Theta. Her eyes narrowed. "That's not a scout ship," she whispered. "It was meant to be." The Council had authorized entry for a Class 4 observer vessel, outfitted for low-risk diplomatic travel. What sat in Theta's docking bay was dense. Too dense. There were mass inconsistencies, hidden compartments, and active coolant systems. "They didn't just bring a delegation," Zelith murmured. "They brought something else." "Unauthorized weapons?" Vartak offered nervously. "I don't know. But they're hiding it well. And we're fools if we think it's accidental." Elsewhere in the Council Tower, Ambassador Rhys Callahan stood before a narrow window in his assigned suite, sipping what passed for coffee in Council hospitality packs. It was green, slightly fizzy, and smelled like boiled beetles. He drank it anyway. Earth had taught him to respect local customs, even when those customs tasted like regret. Lieutenant Nadia Solis sat on the edge of the couch, boots off, long braid trailing over her shoulder. The black case was on her lap, inert and humming softly, as if dreaming. "I counted 4 surveillance drones last night," she said. 2 in the ducts. 1 in the mirror. 1 posing as a decorative light fixture. "Polite of them not to send 12, Rhys replied, tapping the window. "You think they suspect?" "They suspect we're strange. But not dangerous." He smiled into his reflection. "That's the problem with empires. They forget how dangerous desperate people can be." Nadia's fingers brushed the case. "Should we prep the beacon?" "Not yet. Let's give them a little more rope." He turned away from the window and sat across from her. "How's the power cell?" "Holding. And the payload's clean. Quantum sealed." "Good." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "What about the Council's tech grid?" She smirked. "Soft as butter. I slipped a crawler into their metadata stream last night. Half their security alerts are chasing phantom feedback from Earth's YouTube archive." "Let me guess. Cat videos." "Cat videos," she confirmed. "They'll think it's an alien language. They're already trying to decode Nyan." Rhys chuckled, then sobered. "We need them to keep underestimating us. Until they don't." Across the hall, High Chancellor Tracker curled around his throne, tentacles twitching as he reviewed the human delegation's entry logs. The inconsistency in ship mass had reached his desk. He summoned Commander Gorven. The armored brute marched in, expression locked somewhere between contempt and indigestion. His kind didn't believe in subtlety. Gorven valued strength, directness, and the obliteration of threats before they became inconveniences. The humans brought war machines, Tracker said without preamble. Gorven blinked slowly. Good. Shall I crush them? Not yet. Tracker's gills fluttered. They are not fools. They flaunt their insolence as bait. We must study them, map their edges, learn where they bleed. Gorven grunted. I say provoke them. Find out how much bark hides how much bite. The Chancellor considered. I authorize a pressure test. Subtle. Controlled. No weapons. Gorven's smile split the glowing mandibles of his jaw. Then I shall speak with them. That afternoon, a council-sponsored meet-and-greet was hastily arranged in the tower's diplomatic garden, a neutral space filled with synthetic flora, ambient gravity pockets, and translators disguised as butterflies. The purpose was stated as cultural exchange. The reality, a staged prod to test the humans' reactions. Reese arrived in a linen blazer over his suit, sunglasses perched atop his head, and a relaxed swagger that contrasted starkly with Solis's coiled stillness beside him. The garden was filled with carefully curious aliens sipping nutrient drips, clicking mandibles, and pretending not to stare. Zelith was already there, watching from a perch above a glowing fountain that emitted calming harmonics. She noted how Reese moved, how he placed himself where every exit was within reach, how his casual conversation masked data-gathering glances. Gorven approached like a storm front, all gleaming exo-armor and arrogance. He towered over the ambassador, casting a shadow across the garden tiles. Earthling, he rumbled, voice low and deliberate. Why does your ship contain vehicles of war? Reese looked up, unfazed. We call them tanks. But technically, they're multi-terrain autonomous defense platforms. The model's real popular back home. You defy Council Armistice. I'd call it insurance, Reese replied smoothly. You know how volatile these space lanes can be. Pirates, slavers, telepathic fungus. We like to be prepared. You insult us by bringing weapons into our peace. Reese tilted his head. I'd say bringing weapons without using them shows respect. It means we trust your civility. Gorven stepped closer. And if we decide to dismantle them? Nadia stepped forward, eyes calm and unreadable. I wouldn't advise that. And why not female? She smiled, small and cold. Because the last species that touched our tanks without permission doesn't exist anymore. A moment of silence stretched taut. Zelitha's feathers flared. Several council delegates shifted uneasily. Reese held up his hand. Let's not misplace intentions. We came in peace. The tanks were just luggage. Gorven stared at him for a long time. Then he laughed, a jagged, grinding sound. You humans are amusing. You bluff well. But amusement is not immunity. He turned and stomped away, crushing 3 decorative plants underfoot. As the party resumed its artificial cheer, Reese and Solis stepped aside into the garden's quieter edge. We've been marked, Nadia murmured. Of course, Reese said. That was the point. A low ping sounded in his comm implant. He tapped it once, sub-vocalizing the command. Ambassador, came Zelitha's voice. May I request a private word? They met in a nearby atrium, neutral territory. Zelith hovered slightly off the ground, wings flaring for balance. Her eyes blinked independently. I've studied your species, she said. Your record is fractured. We prefer complex, Reese replied. You smile too easily. Your metaphors conceal intent. You'd be amazed what we can fit into a metaphor. She studied him, feathers ruffling in thought. The council sees you as erratic. I suspect otherwise. I suspect calculation. Reese gave her a slow grin. Now that's just flattery. I am not your enemy. Good. Because we haven't made any friends yet. She leaned forward slightly. You brought war machines to a peace forum. Why? He was silent for a moment. Then, because we were invited to observe, not to speak. Sometimes, you gotta bring your own seat to the table. Zelith didn't reply. She simply watched him, as one studies a new predator, not out of fear, but out of respect. That night, deep within the Council surveillance servers, something blinked red. Unauthorized energy discharge. Docking Bay Theta. 2 maintenance drones investigating the bay vanished from contact. A third sent back corrupted footage. Shadows moving, metal groaning, and a brief glimpse of something that looked suspiciously like a turret adjusting its angle. By morning, Tracker had convened an emergency quorum. "They are preparing for something," the Chancellor hissed. "Deploy containment units. Discreetly. They will notice," warned Zelith. "Let them. If they react, we respond." Gorven grinned behind his armor. "Let us see what Earth is made of." At dawn, a small procession of Council security bots hovered toward Docking Bay Theta. Officially, it was a routine inspection. Unofficially, it was bait. The bots scanned the vessel's hull, transmitted encrypted code, and approached the cargo ramp. Inside the human ship, a sensor tripped. Reese, fully dressed in combat gear beneath his ambassadorial layers, checked his wristband. Nadia looked up from her case. "Trigger. They're poking the bear. Do we poke back?" Reese smiled. "No. We wait. And we count how many teeth they think we have." In the control chamber, the tanks awoke. They did not roll forward. They did not fire. They merely turned. Each turret rotated, slowly and with mechanical grace, to face the entrance of the docking bay. The bots stopped cold. An error message bloomed across the Council surveillance feeds. "Autonomous threat detected. Response unknown." Security froze. Gorven swore. "What kind of tanks are those?" someone whispered. Reese's voice came through the Council's emergency comm line, polite as ever. "Council friends, I hope y'all don't mind. Our machines are real shy about strangers poking around. But don't worry, they only bite if you do." Tracker's gills flared. "He's threatening us on our own network." "No," Zelith said softly. "He's warning us. And he's watching who ignores it." By the time the Council regrouped in the hall, the tone had changed. Subtle tension thrummed in the air. Delegates whispered. Gorven paced like a caged predator. Zelith watched them all with growing certainty. Humans hadn't stumbled here. They had chosen this moment, this place, this stage, and they had brought the kind of theater that ended in fire. Reese stood at the center podium again, his expression gentle. "We came here to learn," he said. "And we are. Every second." He looked around the hall, and his smile widened. "But I reckon y'all are learning too." Solis opened the black case beside him. It glowed softly, an interface, not a weapon. Not yet. But it pulsed with a language the Council didn't recognize. Zelitha's heart stilled. It wasn't an Earth design. It was spliced. Borrowed. Modified from tech belonging to other Council species. Reese saw her recognition. He nodded once, slowly. "You thought we were alone out there," he said. "We weren't." The hall fell silent. Then he said the last line before the lights dimmed for adjournment. "And the thing about humans, Chancellor, we don't wait for the world to change. We change the world to fit our boots." Zelith stood very still as the hall emptied, the taste of revelation bitter on her tongue. The humans hadn't brought tanks. They'd brought a message. And the galaxy was just starting to hear it. The day the Council chambers burned began with silence. Not the ceremonial kind. Not the reverent, diplomatic hush that accompanied state matters. This silence was electric, wrong. A breath held across the cosmos. From the outer rings of the Council spire to the echoing heart of the Grand Chamber, tension wound itself through the architecture like a virus looking for a nerve. Ambassador Reese Callahan stood at the center dais, calm as a preacher before the storm. His hat was gone. His jacket, too. He wore a black undersuit lined with smart fabric fibers that shimmered faintly in the filtered starlight. Beside him, Lieutenant Nadia Solis adjusted the final calibration on the console they'd embedded during last night's power grid diagnostics. Technically, they hadn't lied. Earth had a long tradition of fixing broken systems by completely dismantling them. Reese tapped the comms mic, his voice smooth and warm. Counselors, good morning. Before we begin, I'd like to thank y'all for the hospitality and the surveillance. Real thorough work. Makes a guy feel important. Gorven bristled from the lower tier. His armor braced with an audible hum. This is not the time for human wit. Oh, but I reckon it is, Reese replied, eyes never leaving him. 'Cause this morning, it's not just Earth that's watching. From the balcony, Zelith observed, feathers drawn tight against her body. She'd woken to 3 separate intelligence briefings warning of human code injections, drone malfunctions, and one very disturbed janitorial AI that kept muttering about the smell of old war. She had filed her final report 3 hours ago, without sending it. By the time she finished, she'd realized no one on the council would believe it. They still didn't understand. They thought humans were improvising. They weren't. They were conducting a symphony. Across the chamber, the black case Nadia had once cradled now stood open. Inside, not a bomb, not exactly. A control module. Biometric synced. Nested systems from Council Tech adapted for human chaos theory. It pulsed like a second heartbeat. Reese placed his palm on the sensor and smiled like a man saying grace before the fireworks. Let's begin. The lights died. The chamber plunged into darkness, followed by a low, rising vibration. Delegates panicked. Security bots flared online, then instantly overloaded and collapsed into silence. Emergency lights flickered, then froze. The entire chamber's grid choked, fed conflicting commands from a system now rewritten in human logic, unpredictable, redundant, and fatally elegant. Then came the sound. Not alarms. Music. Low at first, almost a whisper. A dusty guitar riff, human in origin, unmistakable. Johnny Cash. I fell into a burnin' ring of fire. A ripple of confusion passed through the council. Gorven barked something into his comm, but his signal bounced back gibberish. Council soldiers reached for weapons. Too late. From above, the ceiling's central dome cracked apart, not with violence, but precision. Panels retracted. Glass fell in geometrically perfect shards. Through the opening, descending on drop cables, came the tanks. 2 of them. Mid-sized, quad-legged, with armor plates like matte obsidian. They landed without ceremony, each step rattling the bones of the chamber. Their turrets hummed. Guns didn't fire, they simply aligned, twin barrels locking on command centers, exits, and power nodes. A second beat of the music kicked in. And it burns, burns, burns. Solis drew her sidearm, not to aim, but to gesture. Stand down, she said, voice cutting cleanly across the rising panic. Nobody move, nobody dies. Your only enemy right now is your assumptions. One of the tanks deployed a comms relay. A hologram flickered to life above it, showing feeds from across the station. Council barracks. Sealed. Hangars. Jammed with human firewalls. External defense turrets. Offline. Recalibrated by Earth algorithms that thought in metaphors and memes. Zelith stepped forward. Wings flared. What are you doing? Ending the audition, Reese replied. See, we were never here to apply for membership. We came to expose the rot. Tracker emerged from the shadows, flanked by armed retainers. You will be annihilated. No, Reese said. We already won. He flicked 2 fingers. A new set of images filled the air, screens showing intercepted council communications, transcripts, encrypted orders, footage of containment operations on pre-warp species. One clip showed a planet, green, thriving, being stripped for resources under the Council's mandate of stability enforcement. You all talk peace, Solis said, stepping forward. But we know what you really do. You prune the galaxy. Decide who gets to rise and who vanishes. And when Earth got too clever, too curious. You brought tanks, Tracker spat. We brought proof, Reese corrected. Zelitha's voice broke in, sharp and measured. And what will you do now? Rule us. Don't want to rule you, Reese said. Want you exposed. Want every species out there to see the truth. And then, we'll see who still salutes this flag of yours. A siren screamed from the lower decks. Not a human one. Council emergency beacon. Tracker's eyes widened. You triggered our distress protocol. Nope, Reese said. You did. We just rewired your threshold sensors. A little panic in your blood work, a surge in heart rate, some environmental stress, and boom. As if on cue, the chamber's far wall buckled. Not from weapons. From ships. Human vessels. 3 of them, decloaking just outside the station. Not massive, not menacing. Fast, lean, built for insertion, extraction, and misdirection. Their presence was not dominance, it was punctuation. Gorven charged. Solis didn't flinch. The nearest tank moved faster than anything that size had a right to. It intercepted the alien commander in a single stride, slammed him to the floor with a blunt kinetic wave, and hovered a turret an inch above his throat. Don't, she said. Poke the bear. Reese turned back to the council. I'll make this real simple. We're leaving. We're not staying here to rebuild your system or teach you manners. But you'll remember what happened today. Earth will be hunted for this, Tracker seethed. Maybe, Reese said, and his smile dropped at last. But now everyone knows Earth exists. And if they come, they'll come knowing we don't run. He took a slow breath. We adapt. We endure. We plan. And when pushed, we push back. Smiling. Zelith stared at the man as if seeing him for the first time. No longer the affable ambassador. Not even the strategist behind the curtain. He was the weapon. Above them, a new transmission began. Earth's signal. Not a declaration of war. A documentary. Footage from Earth. Factories, streets, revolutions, mistakes, triumphs, a billion lives churning forward. All the chaos. All the color. All the survival. The galaxy watched, and it did not see monsters. It saw itself, uglier, perhaps. Louder. But real. When the tanks finally powered down, and the humans turned to leave, Zelith called out. Why now? Reese paused at the threshold. Because y'all invited us to watch. And we watched enough. He pressed a button. The chamber lights flared back to life. Emergency systems restored. Council authority resumed. But something was broken in the air. A silence no longer electric, but hollow. Humanity had not stayed to conquer. They had just reminded the galaxy that some species never kneel quietly. Reese and Solis walked toward the exit platform, steps echoing across scorched tile and stunned silence. A final message blinked across the council's main screen. Transmission ended. Signal lost. Please hold for reconnection. The smoke hadn't fully cleared from the council chamber when the first terms of peace were broadcast. A static crackled stream stretched from the broken heart of the Galactic Council to every outer rim frequency, an unfiltered signal that carried a truth sharper than any weapon. Not one of conquest, but of demonstration, of intent, of warning. At the center of the ruined hall, Reese Callahan stood with his hands folded behind his back, suit dusty, boots stained with coolant and ash. His voice came clear through the chamber's failing audio systems. Calm, southern-dipped, impossibly steady. You'll rebuild this place, he said, glancing around at the scorched murals, shattered sigils, and twitching security drones. You'll polish the floors, plug the holes, re-etch all your ancient codes. And you'll pretend, maybe, that today didn't happen. No one answered. Thing is, he continued, we didn't come to destroy your council. We came to remind you it ain't immortal. Empires love forgetting that. Tracker, battered but upright, leaned on a scorched support column. His robes were torn. The regal weight he once wore like armor now hung around him like cloth soaked in failure. You've made enemies of every power in this galaxy, he growled. Do you think fear is peace? Reese turned slowly to face him. No, sir. But sometimes, It's the only way to make folks listen before they shoot. Behind Reese, Lieutenant Nadia Solis moved with precision, checking devices, cataloging council reactions, logging which species rallied to protect their leaders and which stayed quiet. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence had weight. She had stared down the galaxy and not blinked. Your tanks will not protect you forever, Tracker spat, the last embers of defiance clinging to him like dying stars. We ain't countin' on forever, Reese replied. Just long enough to make sure everyone knows Earth's no one's pet project. Council delegates stirred in the upper tiers. Murmured communications filtered in from other systems. Some alarmed, others intrigued. Species previously denied a council voice now tuned in with sharpened interest. Even the drone caste of Neural, long treated as biological tools, sent a query. Is Earth accepting alliances? Zealith stepped forward from the edge of the council's spiral ramp, her silver feathers scorched at the edges. Her voice was rougher than usual, but steady. You planned this. Down to the hour. Reese nodded once. Down to the minute. She studied him, eyes not afraid, but altered. You used your own history as bait. Every scar we carry, Reese said, we weaponized. Because we knew y'all would see our worst and think that's all we were. A pause passed between them. There was no satisfaction in his voice. No triumph. Just a heavy, grounded understanding of what it had taken to get here. Solis finally spoke, her voice low, deliberate. We didn't want war. We wanted choice. You gave us none. Zealith looked toward Tracker. And now? The Chancellor turned toward the crowd of stunned delegates. He could feel his empire slipping through his fingers like ash. The system he had built, inherited, and enforced with distant precision had been gutted in a single, orchestrated maneuver by a species still using combustion engines a generation ago. You offer us shame, he muttered. No, Reese said. We offer terms. A collective hush fell across the chamber. Solis tapped the console. Holograms bloomed like wildfire. Treaties rewritten in human legal code. Clauses that removed veto powers from elite species. Guaranteed seats for new civilizations. Oversight agencies not based in the central core but rotating through the outer rings. Zealith's eyes widened. You're restructuring the council. We're proposing it, Reese corrected. Y'all can vote. Or not. But from this day forward, every planet that signs with Earth gets a voice. And protection. Gorven groaned where he lay restrained beneath a disabled turret, snarling. Protection with guns. Protection with presence, Solis replied. Guns are just punctuation. A low vibration filled the chamber. One of the human ships above shifted position. Not aggressive, just visible. It cast a long shadow through the hole in the chamber's roof. Tracker turned to Zealith. You support this? She didn't answer immediately. I support balance, she said at last. And Earth has shown more of it in a single day than we have in 500 cycles. She stepped beside Reese. He didn't smile. Just gave her a nod that spoke of mutual risk. Tracker sank onto the lowest step of the council tier, the weight of centuries pressing into his spine. You'll never be trusted. Good, Reese said. We're not here to be loved. Just remembered. One by one, other delegates began stepping forward. Some cautiously, others with grim resolve. They reviewed the terms. They conferred in private frequencies. One by one, they began to vote. By the third hour, it was clear, Earth's treaty would pass. The Council's power wouldn't vanish overnight. But the center had shifted. The old guard's monopoly was broken. The galaxy was watching Earth now, not as a novelty, but as a force. As the final vote transmitted, Solis secured the uplink. Council systems rebooted with new access protocols. Earth's diplomatic codes were seeded into every interface. Zealith approached Reese quietly. What happens now? We go home, he said. She blinked. That's it. We've got crops to grow, oceans to clean, holidays to invent. Y'all keep this council running. We'll check in. She stared. You really don't want to rule? He turned to look at the smoking chamber, the tanks, the wreckage. If we wanted to rule, he said, we'd never have asked for a seat. Outside the station, the stars shifted as Earth's ships peeled away, disappearing one by one into jumpstream glows. They didn't fire a shot on the way out. They didn't need to. The next day, across hundreds of systems, fragments of the footage leaked. Not the destruction. Not the tanks. The speeches. The metaphors. The moment Reese said, "We came to learn, but we brought our own chalk." Alien species who had never heard of humans now quoted their idioms. "Don't poke the bear" became a phrase taught in diplomacy classes. "Bring your own seat" became a slogan painted on hulls by resistance groups in fringe systems. And in the ruins of a war that never quite happened, the Council was rebuilt, not to Earth's image, but to its pressure. Zelith would go on to chair the Oversight Corps. She kept the scorched feather she lost that day in a frame behind her desk. Tracker would retire quietly, writing a memoir titled When the Apes Brought Tanks. Gorven would become a military instructor, warning cadets about underestimating species who laugh before they shoot. And Reese Callahan? He went back to Earth. Built a cabin in Wyoming. Planted tomatoes. Hosted delegations from 36 star systems and made every one of them eat barbecue before talking politics. The tanks were returned to storage. Polished. Maintained. Just in case. Because humans, for all their talk of peace, still remembered. Still adapted. Still smiled before the storm. And the galaxy never again mistook kindness for weakness. They called Earth many things after that.